Good morning, everyone. It's 11 o'clock Eastern Time, top of the hour here. This is Dan McGran with Revtrack. I'm the Revtrack Sales Director. Thank you for joining today's webinar. And we're going to get started with just a few of the housekeeping items that we need to go through, right? So everyone is muted. We will have questions at the end, so please submit them via chat, and we will try, or I will try, to get to them. I'm the presenter today, and we'll be answering those questions as best I can. Today's recording will be shared. It's being recorded and can be shared afterward. The slides were uploaded because we have a bunch of links in the slides, so you'll be able to download them during today's presentation. If that doesn't work, just contact us, right? My email address is at the end of the presentation, or you can go to our website and hit our Contact Us button and ask for the slides if you wanted those separately, if you're not able to download those today during the webinar. And lastly, I'm going to ask, I think I have a couple coworkers on today's webinar, and lately my microphone has been fading out after 45 minutes to an hour. Today's webinar is only scheduled for 30 minutes, so I don't anticipate any issues. But if there are, I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to get in touch with me via Slack or Skype or text or something, and I'll try and fix that if that happens. So with that, again, thank you everyone for joining, and let's get started. So what we're looking at today, again, is just about 30 minutes, even with the question and answers, and we're going to quickly cover what is SAP SuccessFactors ECP, talk about that a little bit, what's that offering look like, a little bit about the history of it as well, and then quickly about the challenges of ECP, Employee Central Payroll, change management, which are very similar to other SAP change management challenges, but a little bit reprioritized. We'll cover briefly how Revtrack helps with ECP, or Employee Central Payroll, and then we'll move to questions. So about those three sections, we anticipate that to take about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we'll jump into the questions. So as far as what is SAP SuccessFactors ECP, well, you can tell by the name, right, that it's part of the SuccessFactors family, and it's been that way for several years now. And it's an SAP cloud-based solution, really meaning a hosted solution with managed services. So it's a little bit confusing there because SAP and some of their marketing will call it a SaaS offering, or maybe some of their partners would call it a SaaS offering, but it's not a true software as a service offering, right? It is sort of a hybrid SaaS offering where it is a subscription-based, which requires new licensing. So that part is similar to SaaS, and it provides some managed services, right? So you're delivered with it a landscape, typically a dev, a quality, and a production. There is some flexibility there with a couple clients on dev, a couple clients on quality for you to manage your ECP environment. And it is connected with SuccessFactors Employee Central, right? So they go together, and that's why it's part of that whole family there. Provisioning or onboarding ECP is normally not something a customer does on their own, right? It's done via a partner that they will engage with, a certified partner. There are several out there in the marketplace. One that we've actually mentioned by name in today's webinar is EpiUse, that has some services and some tools, and they have a lot of expertise in the whole space. So you're normally going to work with a partner to go from where you are today with an on-premise payroll, SAP Payroll, and move to SuccessFactors ECP or some other options that we'll talk about today, right? And the functionality is similar but different, right, to on-premise payroll. Fundamentally, it's the same on-premise payroll that's been there for years, but now it's hosted by SAP. But it's different because it's accessed via SuccessFactors Employee Central. So some aspects are the same, some aspects are different, right? And you'll just have to sort of go with that. It's also, I might use interchangeably SAP on-premise payroll or SAP HR, because they're relatively the same thing. As we all know, SAP likes to have different names for the same thing sometimes. Another key aspect of ECP is there's no end of maintenance date currently, right? So customers can move to it, know that it will be supported long into the future. There's no date now, and expect that to be well into the 2030s, let's say. Whereas with the current on-premise SAP payroll solution that many customers are running, that deadline is now 2027. It was 2025, but I think we all remember earlier this year, SAP extended the business suite applications to the time of 2027, since on-premise SAP payroll is in that family of business suite applications, let's say, that got extended as well. And then you could even continue with that even further through extended maintenance, paying the additional fees to SAP up until 2030 with your on-premise, right? Another key factor, and really what we're going to concentrate on today for the next 20 minutes or so, is that SuccessFactors ECP uses SAP standard transport technology or functionality, right? What we're all used to for many, many years here in the SAP space. But leave it to SAP, they can never let a good thing alone. They have to offer new solutions, right? So what you might see out there now is something called SAP HCM, Human Capital Management, for S/4HANA on-premise. What does that mean? Right? What that means is it's another option for SAP on-premise payroll customers. It's not ECP. It's basically taking what you have with your SAP current on-premise payroll and then moving it to S/4HANA. Okay, assuming that you as an organization might be going down the S/4HANA path, it will be available for that, but it's still not available for over 2 years, right? This is a plan from SAP, right? So this is not ECP, it's just an alternative for SAP on-premise customers. Okay? Revtrack still supports it, just as an aside, and that's supported currently until at least 2030. Perhaps that's even longer, because in part of SAP's announcements earlier this year, they were talking about supporting S/4HANA until 2040. But everything we've seen so far says at least this new one that's coming, not available for 2 years, will be at least available through 2030. Continuing on a little bit about the history, right? So again, I'm calling it on-premise payroll. Hopefully that's making sense to the audience here. Again, maybe you call it SAP HR, but that's been around for quite some time, right? We all know since the 2000s sometime, I guess. And it was pretty straightforward for many of those years, right? It was just another SAP landscape sometimes. Sometimes it was part of your ECC solution, depending on how it was set up. But it was straightforward, and it was handled by your SAP teams. But then the whole SuccessFactors acquisition happened. Can't believe it was 9 years ago, but that's when that occurred. And since that time, it's sort of been confusion and lots of strategies from SAP for those roughly 9,000, that's the figure that SAP gives, of SAP on-premise payroll customers that are out there in the world, right? And this, this confusion was due to, just business as usual, right? They were filling gaps with the technology in the SuccessFactors family, right? Nothing to do with payroll, but maybe adding talent solutions and things like that. And you'd get information from the SuccessFactors conferences. You would get new releases of SuccessFactors, new releases of and updates to SAP on-premise payroll. SAP seemed to be changing the options almost every year. If you'd go to a Sapphire or a TechEd, you'd hear one thing, and then SuccessFactors Connect, there would be maybe a slightly different story. But that did seem to have stabilized recently, let's say within the last 2.5 or 3 years, from what we can tell, with ECP, Employee Central Payroll. And now customers have a fairly clear path of what their options are. That was initially called SuccessFactors Managed Payroll. SAP was going to go down this path of using it with a couple partners, one of them being EpiUse, another one being Northgate Arinzo, who has a lot of experience in SAP payroll outsourcing. But that sort of changed, and the current offering today is managed and hosted by SAP, right? And that by hosted, we mean that they handle the maintenance, the availability, SLAs, the patching, those types of things, right? So where does that leave us, right? If you're running on-premise payroll today, you really have 4 choices. This was a great slide that I borrowed from this partner, EpiUse Labs. And this link at the bottom is a very comprehensive guide to all of your options and sort of that whole history of SAP on-premise payroll. So I'd highly recommend that one. But it's really down to 4 key options that customers have. If you're running on-premise payroll today, as we're seeing that there were about 9,000 and only 400 or so had moved over to SuccessFactors ECP, so most are still figuring out what to do. You can continue running that. This one is a little bit outdated. I didn't update it. This is now till 2027. So you can continue business as usual through 2027 and even further beyond with extended maintenance, sort of the do nothing strategy. Just continue doing what you're doing. This is the new offering that SAP announced about a year ago, the HCM for S/4HANA. This is where you would take your on-premise payroll based on ECC, and then you would redeploy it based on the new offering coming from SAP for S/4HANA. Okay. Again, you can't do that yet because it's not available yet. To SAP's credit, they were initially saying 2023 for this solution, but they bumped it up by 6 months or something, and now they're promising it in the second half of 2022, which is about 2 years from now. Okay, so that's another option. What we're going to concentrate on in the next slides is really the Employee Central Payroll option, right? Because that's what this webinar is about. And that's the SAP hosted solution. It's similar, but not the same as the on-premise. And generally for customers with 2,000 or 3,000 or more employees is who it's recommended for from SAP. And then maybe some of you are familiar with the other options that have been in the marketplace for many, many years now, the outsourcing or business process outsourcing options. We know of them here at Revtrack because 2 of our customers are the biggest providers for outsourced SAP payroll, one of them being ADP Global View and the other being Northgate Arinzo or NGA. So they've been using Revtrack for many years, and that's always an option for customers. But again, we're going to concentrate today on a little bit more about the transport and change management aspects of Employee Central Payroll, because we know that we have some Revtrack customers on today's call and some people that may not be as familiar with Revtrack. So that's what we're going to work on today. So what are the challenges associated with ECP change management, right? They're going to be very similar to the ones that are there today for normal SAP change management, but they're reprioritized, let's say, right? Because security, of course, is very important when you're dealing with payroll and general HR information. No one wants to make the headlines for the company that there was some type of payroll or HR breach, right? And so security, compliance, audit, that's always very important. From an employee perspective, accuracy and availability, right? The employees want to get paid on time. They don't want to hear that the system is down and you can't pay them. Of course, customers have lots of controls in place to make sure that doesn't happen, but they are they rise to the top of some of the challenges of managing SAP changes and the things that you're trying to avoid, right? You do that through repeatable, enforceable processes. That's what many Revtrack customers realize they can get with Revtrack. And then we have some of our safety checks that are built in that help them maintain that security and compliance and availability aspects by checking for sequencing with overtake, overwrite checking and parallel development checking in real time, as well as identifying object dependencies and even identifying the impact of the types of changes you might be making to those ECP environments, right? So that's all some of the challenges that customers are facing. And sort of shifting here a little bit, and taking a look at what's near and dear to us here at Revtrack is transports and SuccessFactors ECP. So what's that all about, right? So what we're looking at here is an excerpt from, on the right-hand side, we have a little image of the SuccessFactors Employee Central Payroll FAQ, right? And that goes on for about 10 or 15 pages. But we have an excerpt here on the change control portion. And I'm not going to read all of these, but if you quickly scan it, you're going to see it's your responsibility, meaning the customer's responsibility for managing the transports, creating the transports, testing the transports, promoting the transports, all those types of things, right? Because this is a traditional ABAP-based environment that's now living in the cloud. You have to take control and do your own development, your own configuration, your own testing, your own imports, and all those types of things, right? So key message here is it's sort of business as usual for managing transports. Now, one thing I want to point out, I know it's very small, so I apologize, but I only took a partial screenshot of this, but this last question here was pretty important. And it's, is it possible to integrate ECP with monitoring tools? So actually, I'm going to navigate here. Hopefully this will work to that FAQ. Didn't like it, but I think it's actually here. Okay. So here we are, and here's the actual FAQ. And if we look at this one a little bit more closely, because that's an important one, where is it? Is it possible with our monitoring tools? And the answer is no, right? So SAP controls which tools can be installed on this ECP environment, and seems a little bit strange, but they will not allow Solution Manager to be installed. So that means that you couldn't use Solution Manager for monitoring, but more important from the change management standpoint, you can't use the Solution Manager charm functionality with it, right? That's what SAP is telling everyone today. So just wanted to point that out, and you can have that information in the link if you download the slides here. So again, I know we have a good amount of customers on today's call, and we also have some that aren't familiar with Rev-Trac. So we just have two quick slides on a little bit about who we are at Revelation Software Concepts for those that aren't familiar with us. All right, we've been in the business of SAP change management for over 20 years, founded way back in '97. We've been part of the SAP Partner Network since the beginning, back in 2002. When we add up all of our Revtrack users across our customers, that's more than 60,000 Revtrack users worldwide. So we have a good, steady customer base. And as a company, we choose to focus 100% on SAP change control and automating it in the best way for all the different solutions. And our customers, we know, are the ones that are responsible for the SAP changes and transports going on at those SAP using companies, right? So what do we do for those internal SAP IT teams? Really, we focus on producing the best outcomes that we can for them, which really means faster and more frequent SAP releases, right? Customers want things yesterday, not a week from now or 2 weeks from now or next month's release, right? They need to react to their business demands faster. So they need to increase the velocity and the volume of change that these IT teams are processing, and they do that through automation with Rev-Trac. They also need to improve the change quality. That's another big outcome by having these repeatable, auditable processes to make sure that testing is done and code analysis is done in an automated way, let's say. They need to lower the cost and lower the risk of managing SAP changes. when they have the big projects, they want to deliver them on time and on time and on budget, excuse me, and just overall increase their team productivity. I won't click on this, but we interview our customers on a yearly basis, and we store all that information in a third-party validated site called Tech Validate, and this just shows some of the results of those surveys. This was one that talked about the outcomes that we help our customers with, reducing production errors and increasing the volume and reducing the manual effort and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit about Revtrac as a company, or RSC as a company, and Revtrac as a solution. So really one of the most important slides here today that we wanted to convey to people is, I just mentioned a few minutes ago that SAP Solution Manager Charm is not a certified solution for SuccessFactors ECP, but Rev-Trac is. So what we're looking at here is a note from SAP. And you can see the note number here, and there's a link to it at the bottom. A very recent note. And there are a list of add-on products, because Rev-Trac is a certified ABAP add-on, is sort of our SAP categorization, let's say. There's a list of about 30 or 40, and Rev-Trac is on that list. So we're just looking at the note here, and then we scroll down to where Rev-Trac was listed among those other companies. That means that what that really means is that customers can take Rev-Trac, which is installed via transports, normal SAP transports, and they will be uploaded into the managed systems for the customer if they're running ECP. Right, that's the main point we wanted to point out here. And obviously, Revtrac's been a partner with SAP for many years, so we have many certifications. So we were happy that our technical team was able to get this certification, and then that SAP is allowing Revtrac to be installed on those systems for our customers that choose to use Revtrac. Okay. Then looking at the benefits of Revtrac for ECP customers, right? Looks very similar to the slide we had before, right? Where Revtrac is delivering those repeatable, enforceable processes with our workflow automation tool for SAP change management. We do our error checking in terms of sequence checks, parallel development checks, dependency, and impact checks. Another one we're going to spend a few minutes on is just how we can coordinate changes between ECP, SuccessFactors, other SAP, and even non-SAP applications. That's a big benefit of Revtrac. And we pulled up a quote here from that company, NGAHR, and there's a success story on our website that has further details. But again, they've been using Revtrac to manage their more than 100 SAP payroll customers, outsourced payroll customers, for many years. And that was one of the quotes they had given us in the success story. If you wanted further information on that, you can find it on our website. Okay, so a little bit more about the benefits. Again, for Revtrac customers, you're probably familiar with these, but there might be some new ones in here as well, right? So a key one is what we call OOPS, Overtake and Overwrite Protection System, and that's really dealing with the sequencing of SAP changes. We will determine if you're going to overtake a change, meaning moving a newer version ahead of an older version, or if you're going to overwrite a change, which is sometimes more risky and impactful by downgrading the code in your production system, let's say. So Revtrac's always checking for that in an automated way. A newer capability of Revtrac that some customers are taking advantage of is what we call PODS, Peripheral Object Dependency System, and we do checks looking for sort of, I call it the look before you leap. When you're about to move an object or a transport into a target system, let's say from quality to production, we will take a look and say, are there any dependencies that hadn't been identified yet for that change you're about to move into production? A quick example is if you have a report that references a table and they're in different SAP transports and different Revtrac requests, and you're trying to move that report in before that table is in the target system, we would send you a message, and our PODS alert would pop up and let you know that you shouldn't be doing that, right? Because you're going to, that report wouldn't be able to generate, let's say. So we'd let you know that before it happens. Another newer feature is our change impact scoring system, which will look ahead again to, let's say, the production system, collect STO3 statistics over time, and give you a score about how risky that change is. Just a relative score with some basic information associated with it. And if it's a high score, the intent is that you might want to take a closer look at that change before you move it into production, do some additional testing and those types of things. So, and then one that we're going to spend a little bit of time on, which is a relatively newer feature, is called migration action. And what that allows you to do is to coordinate manual steps in between transports. And we have an example here that might apply to an ECP environment. So you might have a list of transports, and transports move into a system, then you might have to do a manual activation step. So that's what we mean by migration actions, and we'll show you an example of that in a minute. So there's just some of the key benefits that apply to ECP as well as non-ECP systems for Revtrack. A few more that we had here is our release management capability, which lets you bundle many Revtracks into a single Revtrack release across ECP, ECC, SRM, you name it, BobJ, non-OBOP systems, all into a release, and then move those and test those together as your business dictates. We also have a parallel development workbench capability, which will let you know if people are working on the same objects at different points in the workflow that have already been released. That would apply also in the ECP environment as well as for non-ECP environments. And for several years now, we've been including RevTrack Insights with Revtrack for our customers, and that gives you a deeper look at your workbench objects and the changes and some landscape management functions, as well as some code checking that you can do there. So here's a quick look. We're not doing a demonstration today. Oh, and let me go back up here. I put there, we're not doing a demonstration today due to the time frame that we're looking at, but you can go out to the Revtrack website, and there are some of these features demonstrated in short recorded videos out there. Wanted to point that out. So, but in lieu of demonstrations, we just wanted to bring up a couple screenshots and sort of explain this migration action, and then also how we can handle SuccessFactors type changes. So that's what we're going to spend the next minute on. So this is a Revtrack screen that customers might be familiar with if they're using our web GUI. And really what it's showing here is the Revtrack number 3608, a title, a workflow that this change will go through, that a customer defines per their processes, right? It's been through some, signified by this checkbox. It's currently in progress. Next step would be migrate it to the quality system. Someone will sign off on that, and then Revtrack does the migration of all these changes into the respective systems. Then, assuming it goes in properly with return codes 4 or less, Revtrack would auto-approve this step. Then people would have to come in and do the proper testing, maybe attach some documents, whatever your process is. And then we migrate to production, Revtrack moves it, checks it again, and then it goes to complete. So this is just signifying the workflow that was defined for this type of change. And then we clicked on the technical tab here, and what we see here are 5 entries, some transports, 2 from a dev case system representing an ECC system, 1 from a CNS system representing an ECP system, for example. And then some of these things that aren't systems, but they're manual steps. And really what we're showing is that you can choose to import some changes, in this case 1, then do a manual step. Someone would be notified, they have to go in, maybe activate something on a system. And then as soon as they do that, then without any intervention from the technical or basis team, the next transport would be imported automatically according to your scheduled jobs. Then that would happen. And then maybe, as an example, maybe there was some type of SuccessFactors activity that had to go on completely outside of the ECP or ECC systems, right? Again, this isn't a live demo, but what you would see in there, if we look at it, let me see if I can move this out of my way. I don't think I can, sorry. You would see specific instructions, right? So we're saying that this would take 5 minutes. This person would be automatically notified after that earlier transport had gone in successfully, and they would have received an email saying, oh, go do these activities. Maybe, as an example, complete SuccessFactors Employee Central changes that need to be coordinated with this. Just again, an example. And then after they do that, they would say okay, and then this last change would go in. So that's an example how our migration actions or manual activities are added in between transports to help you fine tune and coordinate those transport steps that you need to do. Right, so I thought that one was relevant, especially for ECP. And then I think we all know that for those that have been using SuccessFactors, that it doesn't have transports, right? It's a cloud-based application, doesn't really have any concept of transports. You typically have a test system and a production system, or instance, I should say. And you make some changes on your test them out, and then you go make those same changes on your production SuccessFactors instance. So no way to bundle these things up in transports or anything like that. But Revtrack can still be used to create a workflow if you choose to do it, right? And that's all we're showing here is just some workflow with steps that would be specific to a SuccessFactors type change, right? Maybe you do some SuccessFactors testing on that test instance, then you do a config check, then you do a backup of prod, before you ever make any changes to it, just good practice. They have a new tool that's out that some of the changes can be moved via sort of a script-based semi-automated way that you might do, and then you just finish out this workflow. Again, Revtrack isn't moving anything in these changes, but it is coordinating that. But the benefit that customers could receive is maybe those SuccessFactor changes that you're tracking in Revtrack need to be coordinated with real ABAP-based changes, let's say. And that's what we're showing here. So we would have created the dependency between Rev-Trac 1189, which is just the SuccessFactors type change, and Rev-Trac 1188, which is a real change to your ECP environment, let's say. And of course, it could be multiple. But that's just a way that you can coordinate changes, and you could have multiple levels of coordination to different systems and different changes if you needed to when you're using Rev-Trac. So sort of wrapping up here, with what are the RevTrak solutions for Employee Central Payroll, right? Again, RevTrak's been in the SAP change management role for 20 years, and RevTrak Platinum is our flagship product, fully automated SAP change management, supports ECP, ABAP, non-ABAP, cloud platform changes, even non-SAP changes. N+1, N+2, and includes all those automated sequencing, dependency, and impact checks, and it includes that RevTrak Insights tool. So that's our core product that's been in the marketplace for over 20 years. We recently introduced RevTrak 1, which is the same code base as RevTrak. So it's fully automated SAP change management, but it just supports a single SAP landscape for small environments. You could have a scenario where you're using something else for ECC in some of your other landscapes, but you want to use RevTrak for ECP. So you could have RevTrak 1 just for your ECP environment, using RevTrak to manage those ECP changes in the hosted cloud environment. It's pretty much identical to what there is. The only thing that's separate is our REST APIs, which become optional with RevTrak 1, and that's for customers that would want to integrate RevTrak with things like ServiceNow or Jira or other applications with our REST APIs. So that's another option for RevTrak. The third one is RevTrak Insights. Now, RevTrak Insights used to be called SALT. Maybe that's a name that's familiar with a couple people on today's call. It was renamed Insights a few years ago. And as of a recent release, we're also including transport sequencing, dependency, and impact checks with Insights. So that's another option for your ECP environment where you don't want the full RevTrak workflow in there, but you'd still want to gain access to those dependency, sequencing, and impact analysis checks, along with the Insights apps that have been there for many years. So they're the three offerings that we have today. Be happy to talk to anybody about those and what they might be able to do for you. Here is just, we like to make sure that you have access to some of the information that we use to put today's webinar together. So many of these are ECP FAQ links, and here's the big one for the EPIU's history of ECP, very good document, and you can find more information about EPIU services there if you have any interest, and then a couple other links to RevTrak, the demos, and we actually have a separate ECP website page that was recently set up with a lot of this information if you want to find out more about Revtrac and ECP. So with that, we're right at about our 30 minutes, just a few minutes over. Apologize for that. I'm going to do my best to pull up the chat questions now and begin answering any that have come in. And so far, well, that's the chat, but let me look at the questions. Okay. Sorry, how to connect audio. Sorry, I missed that one. Why is there an end been mentioned for SAP on-premise payroll? Let me see, why is there an end? That's just, we were repeating what we had seen and what we heard as we keep track of what SAP is announcing, right? So SAP S4 HANA on-premise payroll is currently what we've seen for SAP documentation ending in 2030. Again, I would expect them to extend that, but that's the latest information that we had. Then there's a question, how do transport requests come into picture in ECP? Okay. Well, just like they would have with any ECC solution, let's say, right? You go in and modify an object in SE38, I think it is, and you save it to a transport, and then it gets created on development, moved into quality, tested, and then if it's tested all right, moved into production or do whatever you need to do there. So transports are exactly the same for ECP as they've been for 20 or 30 years in the main SAP environments. So hopefully that came out in today's presentation. And I believe that's all we are seeing. So hopefully that means the information was fairly clear today. Hopefully it was useful for those that spent the last 30 or 35 minutes on today's webinar with us. If there are further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And if you, we look forward to talking to you in the future. So with that, let me just check one more time to make sure I haven't missed any questions. I will just pin it and bring it back up again. Undock. Okay. Yes, I don't see any further. So thank you all again for joining us today. Hope you have a good afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you're joining us from. And we'll talk again soon. Bye, everyone.